I think we're all here, so welcome on this frosty and foggy morning. Paul Bailey and I were out on the Celestial Compass, and I'll tell you what, it was pretty cold out there this morning at 7 o'clock. So welcome. We have apologies from Mr. Mohi, who can't attend, so we have no one to do our karakia, so we will give it a miss. But essentially we're reconvening the meeting of the, what's that grin, Debbie?
Oh, I just said we've got a whole table full of people.
Do you want to do the karakia? Debbie, you're on for the karakia. You can do it in English. Off you go. Oh, we'll wait until open our meeting. Councillor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've been a bit crook for the last few days. I'm all right at the moment, but if I start coughing and sneezing and accordingly putting other people's health at risk, I'll be leaving.
Okay, no.
I've had an experience of sitting next to a councillor for a day, sneezing and coughing, and then spending 5 days in the sick bay myself, so I don't want to inflict that on anyone else.
Yeah, no, we greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Alan. So if you disappear, we won't mind, and Debbie is going to do the prayer for us.
O God, our Creator, bless us as we gather today for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good of our community and help all your people. Teach us to be generous in our outlook, courageous in face of difficulty, and wise in our decisions. We ask this grace through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Debbie. Greatly appreciated. Now we are basically reconvening the meeting of the 12th of January. Yes.
Two things.
Deputy Chair. Two things.
Two things. Firstly, you've got an apology for Mike Mohi,
yes.
And I'd like to put an apology in for myself at about 9:40 because I've got an appointment at, with the doctor, and I'm not going to miss that. And then I would like to move the apologies be sustained, putting aside self-interest. And the second thing I'd like to say is that this is the first time we've had the Chief Executive in front of us as a new Chief Executive. And I'd just like to say it's great to see you here on the job, and you've got the title there, right in front of you. I don't think you've got the chains yet. The Chief Executive, the Chair's got the chains, but I just want to acknowledge you that it's your first day here from in front of us as councillors. Lovely to see you.
I have to confess that I went to put a tie on a few moments ago and then discovered that I took them all home as I changed offices the other day, so I was caught short. It wasn't deliberate.
I think I might have started the no ties.
Good excuses coming up. So we've got to move to accept those apologies, and we just need to note that Councillor Dick may leave too. So do we have a seconder? Fenton, and all those in favour will accept apologies. Thank you. So let's get on with it. Now what we're going to do here is Leanne has tried to group most of these. We're going to go through every one, but Leanne's tried to group some of them together that have a common sense and a common theme. When we get to them, you can either approve or not of that. And also we have some suggestions from staff here, and you can either agree or not agree with that as we get to them. So, welcome to the public too. I see some of my favourites are coming in today. That's really good to see everybody. Mr. Dellamore's actually sitting at the press. I see after his letter to the paper. I didn't thoroughly read it, but I hear it mentioned us. Okay, right. So we have the first one to discuss. So if I get off track, CEO, you will let me know, won't you? Yep.
I can put them up on the screen if you wanted.
Do you want them on the screen, guys? They do. Yeah, they want them on the screen now. So okay. The number one was the submission from the Hawke's Bay Foundation, range of $15,000 to $20,000. Any discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and then Debbie.
They should be giving us money, not us giving them money.
It's an interesting point.
I
Debbie,
was just wondering who the author of this paper was. There's no name on it.
what's that, sorry?
Who authored this paper? There's no name.
Leanne did.
I'll move 1.1, 1.2.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Do we need more discussion?
We got a second?
Do we have a seconder? Oh, Councillor Barkey, since you... We have a seconder. All those in favour with the recommendation on 1 and 2? Aye. It's carried. Right, the second one is submissions, a whole lot of joining up relating to, holy mackerel, Whātuma and Tuki Tuki. Up here in wetlands. Okay, so the recommendation is to make no change to the annual plan. Any comment on that? Debbie?
I see that
Yeah,
I've
no.
been noted down as councillor advocate, and I haven't actually bought into this. When I signed on to becoming a councillor, I signed on for and I've got the declaration here, in the best interest of the whole region. So I was surprised to see my name scattered amongst this with no forewarning or consultation with me, and for me to look at going with 2.1, I'd just like to change the wording, actually.
Okay, fine.
Do you want more questions, or should I just sort of read roughly what I was thinking?
We'll have change the wording and then we'll go questions.
All right.
Oh.
Request that staff and Councillor Hewitt, because it's my neck of the woods, so I'm happy to, be there, and all other interested councillors, extend an open community invitation to all stakeholders to meet and discuss a coordinated approach to the restoration of Lake Whātuma, with discussions at the meeting intended to inform the environmental enhancement plan for riparian, wetland and biodiversity improvements.
Can you read that again?
Oh, it's up there, Rick.
What's that?
Extend an open community invitation to all stakeholders. Extend an open community invitation.
What's the difference between an open invitation and an open invitation to all community stakeholders?
I don't know.
No.
I'm trying to.
Right?
Let's try to make it more inclusive.
Well, open invitation
Open
is
community.
everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, open community invitation, then full stop. I was hoping Mike might have been here to help me with it because he has interests in that area, but he's not, unfortunately.
Mr. Chairman.
Tom?
There are a number of these where there's a similar
Can you take out the
indication
Tuki catchment there? I
that
didn't say
a
the Tuki catchment in there.
councillor described as the councillor advocate take a leadership role in one or another of these. I
And
can't
I can-
pinpoint them at the moment, but I know there are several. And this is in that spirit. I think there should be a councillor advocate who is attending to the issues raised in 2.1, and there's a later one that refers to the same 21.2, which is several pages in, and then there's 18.1, and so all of which have to do with getting some community engagement and buy-in to whatever we're going to do as far as the environmental aspects of fulfilling Plan Change 6 and so forth. So I would suggest that we do need an advocate. I would propose myself as that advocate, as someone who actually proposed and voted for the condition precedent that's been put on the dam, which is a key trigger to what these folks are submitting about, and the issues they're raising. And I, like Councillor Hewitt, would welcome any councillor to participate in whatever process unfolds, but it seems to me that where this might head is that we need some form of community buy-in, whether that is orchestrated through an advisory group or a refreshed stakeholder group or something. This is a huge project which we've asked the staff to undertake to guide us through what are we going to do as far as meeting the environmental objectives we have for this catchment. And I think it needs some dedicated leadership, and I propose that I provide that leadership.
Thank you, Councillor. Tom, Debbie, you have a comment to that?
Oh,
I want
no,
to discuss
it's
this because
The wording was open community invitation.
no, but you are absolutely deliberately missing the point,
No,
and
I've
it
put
is
I've
provocative.
put
Sorry,
I've put a
Councillor.
motion,
It
no,
is-
point of order, I've put a motion up and already someone else is debating it, so the motion's there, I'm just clarifying exactly what I'd said.
Have you got a seconder for that?
Well,
Seconder for this?
so I was just trying to get the wording right as to what I'd read out.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder for this modification. And without having, do we have any further discussions, Tom? Firstly, do you wish to?
Point of order, Chair?
With a mover and a seconder, do you wish to speak?
Yes, when the wording's right.
And then I'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As I said, I think that it's important that, well, I guess we've got jumped straight into the councillor advocate, and I think it's important with any advocacy that it's not just isolated to one councillor, because for me to attract any momentum around Lake Khartouma, I actually need the support of all of my colleagues around the table, so I would like to have it as inclusive as possible, and so hence my rejigging of that motion to include all councillors and all of the community.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
That's right, I've just had discussions with my fellow councillor here and I'm okay with my point of order. But I do wish to make a comment on the motion.
Well, we have a mover and a seconder. It's time to make a comment now.
Thank you, Chair. I'm inclined to agree with your comment that I think Councillor Hewitt is, in some respects, been deliberately provocative about this. This is an issue where we need to have some sort of leadership in these particular hotspots, shown by council. I have found my involvement with the Tūtera issue, or the Tūtera, Lake Tūtera, has been really helpful for the community involved up there, and I would thoroughly recommend that sort of process in terms of someone actually putting up their hand, saying, I'm going to be involved with this and I'm going to drive this particular issue.
Neil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not uncomfortable at all with the resolution as it was proposed in the paper. I just don't see the issue around this notion of advocacy. I think it's important. It's councillors deciding or using their expertise where appropriate, and that's a good thing, particularly on a catchment by catchment basis. And the other element of this is surely there are other councillors that should be nominated in this process if we're looking at particularly the Tuki catchment is included. So I'm curious to know. I'm curious about the amendment. I think the original was fine. I'm struggling to see the merits of the alternative.
Any other comment? So
I'll
I will.
speak.
Sorry.
Yes, I'll speak when you're ready.
Yeah, no, I wish to speak. The notion of us having an advocate was to have somebody from the council who reported back to the council and reported to the community, and this could be their baby, so to speak. Saying that of course all councillors will back that person. Saying that we don't is, what I'm saying is provocative. We do represent the whole community, and this is not challenging that notion at all. This just says we have a special project here, and we're nominating a council advocate to lead the process on behalf of the council. If you don't approve of that, that's fine. We should put someone else's name there, and we have a proposal on the table. That's my view. Councillor Dick.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have no difficulty with either resolution, but as the constituency representative for this area, Councillor Hewitt has a important role, but what she's suggesting is that it's an inclusive process that other councillors who are interested participate. So I believe that's totally fine. And the notion of appointing advocates, if they take on any particular special responsibility over and above that of their peers, then that should be done specifically by a council resolution, in my view.
I would have thought that's what we're doing.
I think we're being a bit pedantic, to be honest.
Well, look, I won't speak on that. That's your view. Do you want to sum up? Any other speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion. That's on the amended motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? I'm against. Sorry? It's lost. Do you want division? No, don't need division. Okay, so we're going back to the original.
Mr. Chairman, so
Yeah.
I have a motion on
Certainly.
this recommendation. I recommend that we simply replace Councillor Hewitt with Councillor Belford on 2.1, and to economize time, since it's the same recommendation in several places. 18.1.
Let's deal with them when we get to them, Chair. It's not going to take much longer.
Yeah, no, it doesn't take it. I just want to deal with this one, 2.1, Tom. You want to...
18.1, 21.2.
No.
No,
Those
he's
three.
stealing a march on us, Chair. That's
Yeah.
not fair.
It's the same recommendation.
No, it's not.
3 times.
No, it's not. Different names. I just want to go back. I just want to go back here. Just pause, everyone. Debbie, you don't want to be the councillor advocate in your name in here as the councillor advocate for Whātuma.
That's not true. Nobody has had the courtesy to have a discussion with me on that, and so that's why I asked who wrote the paper, because it might have saved a bit of grief if I had have had a phone call.
Okay, so I'm
from
asking you
somebody.
now. I'm asking you, if I haven't, I don't recall I haven't or have or don't, I thought there's been a lot of discussion on this. You say you haven't, I'm asking you now to be the advocate for Lake Whātuma. Do you want it or not?
I'm very happy to be the advocate for Lake Whātuma, but there's a fundamental issue here that I was trying to just put a line through, and that's, I don't think that any of us are, you know, particularly more or lesser qualified for any part of the region. And when I look at like Lake Tutera, for instance, and it just makes me smile because I see Fenton drives past there probably 2 or 3 or 4 times a week, and yet somebody else has decided that they're the advocate in here, and I don't really get that.
Well, I'm interested you don't get it, and fine, you don't get it. I'm still asking you, do you want to be the advocate for this one? We're going to have advocates. Do you want to be the advocate?
Well, are we or not? I mean, I was trying to raise that discussion. I think that we represent our regions.
Yeah, we do, but the people that live closest, no, hang on, Fenton. The people that live closest are the best to be the advocates, and Fenton is the advocate for whakakī. So we're trying to say, to get the people that, as Councillor Dick pointed out, the people that are closest to these things and have the most influence, which you do have the most influence on this, are the best people to deal with the community and back to the council and to represent that project in the council. Now, you say it has never been discussed with you. Well, it's been discussed now. Do you want it or not?
Could I just respond to this? Could I just make a point? Firstly, I don't think it's correct to say this issue, this idea or notion of advocacy was being allocated specifically to councillors has never been discussed before.
That's right.
It has been. We had a good discussion about it. The green shed has been discussed on and off a number of occasions. So it is not a surprise in my view. So I don't know how others might have a view. But the other point about this is it's a simple notion here, and it's like just to describe what we're trying to do. It's a lot of the waterways in New Zealand are in a terrible state because they are common property, and the Environmental Commissioner says it's one of the problems of the commons. No one takes responsibility because it's common. It's well understood that the more people who are around a problem or an issue, then the people feel disproportionately less inclined to do something. So the issue we've got here quite often is that we've all been responsible, but no one in particular, and therefore nothing has happened. So what Rex's leadership is showing through here is to say, well, let's make someone responsible, and so someone comes to this council and advocates on it. And I think it's a really good thing. Happens a lot of other places. It's called portfolio management. You give it whatever name you want. That's what's been here. We've discussed this before. Now the issue here, quite simply, is for Councillor Hewitt to decide whether she wants to be the person who picks this up on Lake Whātuma in her area or not. And the council's offering that. The chair, I didn't think the chair needed to ring and ask, but if it does, he's now asked publicly, quite publicly, to Councillor Hewitt, do you want to do it or not? And so the question, I think, is just simply for Councillor Hewitt to say whether she does, and if she does, I'll support the recommendation as it is, wholeheartedly with both arms. But it's just up to you, Councillor Hewitt, do you want to do it, yes or no? If that's the answer, we can then all move on.
That's fine. I don't appreciate being called.
Sorry?
I don't appreciate being
Well,
called.
say
In
no
the future,
then.
a phone call would have been nice, instead of reading my name all through this.
Well, I think that we have discussed this and we have a different view on that. Do you want to do it or not? Yes or no?
Thank you.
Do you want to move the resolution as is?
I'll move the resolution as is.
I will second the resolution as is. Do we have any speakers? All those in favour of the resolution as is?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Me. Opposed.
Tom opposes?
I don't think there's any such thing as a reluctant advocate. It's a contradiction in terms.
Well, it's part of our English...
Okay, we are moving on, guys. So, we have number...
we have a reluctant speaker, Tom.
We're on to number 3. No, it's not. It's going to be a short day. Number 3. Right, James, I might get you to run through these. Or no, Leanne, you can run, because you did this. This is your paper. James has been on holiday.
I'll
So-
move 3.1. And 3.2. And 3.2. I'll second that. I'll vote in favour of it.
No, wait a second. I would quite like an explanation. You're going to move it.
I don't need an explanation, but...
Okay, move it. We've got a mover, and did you second? All those in favour? Aye. We're not going to do that again. Number 4, Leanne, you can, I want you to just speak to each one just quickly. Number 4. On the Hawke's Bay tourism.
Just before we do that, can I seek clarification here? This is sum of 970,000. I thought the sum was like 1.8 million or something.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, it's 1,820,000. The 970,000 is the increment over a 3-year time frame. So the wording probably needs adjusting. Could either be for the full sum of 1.82 million, or it could be for the additional sum
of 970. It should read full sum. That's-
Point of order.
I think that's
The full
full
order,
sum
Mr.
of
Chair,
1 million.
is a resolution make no change to the annual plan?
It just-
It doesn't say so, does it?
No, that's what it should be.
That's-
Yeah.
That's
Make no change to
That's
the
the
annual-
impact of it.
Yeah. I'll move
Okay.
that, Mr. Chair. Make no change to the annual plan.
The long-term plan.
Do you want any discussion on this, anybody?
Draft.
We've got to move up.
Draft annual plan.
Do we?
Sorry, Chair. Just clarifying what it
Make
was.
no change to the draft annual plan.
Draft annual plan, yeah.
But there is agreement that the wording of it has changed in terms of the number is the full disclosure of the total amount.
No, no.
Councillor Kirkman was just going to put no change.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm making an assumption that the figure in the annual plan is the 1.x amount of dollars. So therefore, we make no change to the annual draft annual plan.
Move in a second. All those in favour. You wish to talk, councillor? Or you wish to talk, councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a comment that I must admit I was disappointed in the submission from the Tourism Hawke's Bay, and if this particular funding had not been in the long-term plan and we weren't committed to it via the long-term plan, I would not be supporting it.
Chair, I'd like to speak to this as well. I will support this, but I don't think in the medium term we can afford to pay so much money to Hawke's Bay Tourism. I don't see it as a priority. I think we're going to have to wind back our funding, and I think we need to send an appropriate signal to the organisation that this will need to be reviewed. I think we need to commence discussions with the TLAs for them to pick up some of the tab for all of this as well.
Oh, just to say, absolutely second support this. I can't agree with my two colleagues just yet because we haven't had any discussions with anyone, and who knows where we may end up. So let's keep our options open going forward. In regard to discussions with the TAs, absolutely support that. Whether it's around funding or whether it's around a more coordinated approach. A less fuzzy line between us would be nice, speaking from the tourism end. But let's have full, rigorous conversations with the TAs and Hawke's Bay Tourism on numerous occasions through the LTP, I think would be the way to go.
Now that's being an advocate. Do you want, as a mover, do you wish to speak, or are you happy? No, oh, you got another. Oh.
I would just like to echo the sentiments of Councillors Bailey and Bevan. Later in this agenda, we're going to, unless I'm totally shocked, decline to provide any money to support our biodiversity strategy, which we all got rather giddy about last time we were presented all this material at the Environment Committee, and but we are cruising along here with a exorbitant payment to Hawke's Bay Tourism.
Point of order, Chair, that's incorrect, actually, because,
Councillor Bailey,
point of order, hear me out. That's incorrect. We're talking about supporting the long-term plan, which both these items are in. There's no extra money.
If you let me finish my sentence, I was going to acknowledge that.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
would you settle down, Councillor?
Just to say, point of order, Chair. The point of order from the councillor from Wairoa is not a point of order. That's a point of substance, a point of debate. What a councillor says is not a matter of order. That's not order. It's about processes about order, and the councillor's wrong on that. He's misusing the standing orders.
So,
being allowed to.
That actually could be an addition to yes, Minister. That last one, couldn't it? Can we just let Councillor Belford have his say?
So to finish my sentence, I'm voting for 4.1 on exactly the same grounds as Councillor Bailey, that it's in the long-term plan. We have to respect the commitment. It's an unwise one, and I hope it doesn't go forward.
Right. Any other speakers? No one?
Well, Mr. Chair, if I could comment
Well, it's your turn.
on this. Yes, it is. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I echo the comments of a few of the councillors this morning. And as it is custom and practice in responding to the submitters to the annual plan, I wonder in fact whether we should add a note of comment back to the submitters saying that the entire contributions made by council towards Hawke's Bay tourism will be reviewed in the coming year, and send a significant and strong indication that there will be they ought to be considering other sources of revenue alongside any further contribution from the regional council.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, and this is a point of order. The Speaker is introducing new material.
Yeah, and I think that's correct.
Which in fact is
Well,
irrelevant.
speaking to the point of order, Mr. Chair.
It's not for you to speak
No,
to.
no, I think it is. I do take your point. I do take your point. Let's just deal with this, Neil, at the moment. I do take your point, and I think that signal possibly needs to be sent. That there is some different views around.
Mr. Chair, if I may comment,
You certainly may.
certainly not to challenge your wisdom around adjudicating on the point of order, but Mr. Chair, you did not afford me the opportunity to speak first in the debate.
What was that, 2 days ago?
And so, speaking to that issue, Mr. Chair, I have not had the opportunity to introduce that as a material matter in the debate. So therefore, whether we want to get
Chairman,
back,
that's a backdoor way of getting
Yeah.
around
We-
the point of order. And
We will accept the point of view.
Can you
What
start
we-
chairing this meeting?
Sorry?
Can you start chairing this meeting?
I'm doing my very best here, Councillor, but I'm trying like herding cats at the moment. What we're going to do is we're going to move on this thing, on this resolution here that we have in front of us, and we'll leave the signals to Tourism New Zealand for later. We accept. Sorry, they can watch the video, but we will leave it. We won't make it part of this substantive.
well, in summary, Mr. Chair, I suggest that we make no change to the annual.
Oh, that's an excellent request. Are you happy with that, Councillor Dick? No change. Okay, we're mover and seconder. No change to the annual plan. All those in favour? Aye, carried. No change. Is that the same as status quo, Councillor? Okay, we're moving along here.
So I've made it big up there, so.
Chair, just a question of clarification for this.
Number 5?
Number 5 is, what is the actual submission? Because on page 41, it's just got, my one's just got following on it. So I don't actually know what they've applied for.
Oh, Oh, was it there? Oh, look, I'm sorry. I thought there must have been in the original one. Mr. Chair, can I briefly explain? So, Toi Martin Foundation, as you will all appreciate, was formerly Enviro Schools, and they've requested an additional 4,400 to Project 895, which is our community engagement project that's managed by Drew Broadley. And we have Sally Chandler as the Enviro Schools coordinator. She works about 30% of her time on that. The program's largely been running through funding from the Nina Brathwaite Trust. That particular funding is no longer available, and Mrs. Chandler has successfully sought contributions to make up the bulk of that from Napier and Hastings councils, $10,000 each. And really what we're asking for here, which is the 4,400, is just the shortfall from that to go into the Project 895 for this coming year, please.
Okay. Councillors, you have that before? Yes.
Could I just ask staff for a reminder as to the total quantum of the allocation in the annual plan, please?
It's around about $25,000. Yeah.
Denton?
So the extra 4,400 comes from existing, meaning there's no change, or there is a change?
No, it would be an increase in the
Of
general funding
4,400.
of $4,400.
Thank
That
you.
would be the effect on the annual plan.
Thank you.
Is there any more discussion? Yeah, Debbie.
I'm happy to move.
We have a mover. Which one? The first one? To approve it, Debbie? To approve. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder to option 1, to approve the funding. Do you wish to speak?
I've been fortunate enough to be out with these guys in the community when they're in schools and kindergartens on the odd occasion, and I think the work that they do is absolutely wonderful in educating young kids. We've had them in here in council, and I'm certainly proud to be part of this program, so I'm very happy to support it.
Peter?
Nothing to add to what Councillor Hewitt said, Chair. You know, environmental action starts at a very young age, and this money is important for that.
Any other speakers? Tom?
This is seditious activity, and we should support it every opportunity we get.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried. An extra $4,000. You'll find that somewhere, will you, Paul?
Yes,
out of James's special fund. Okay, the number 6, submission 51.
Mr. Chair, in regard to this submission, I wonder whether you could summarise your reading of the book that was distributed to you.
No, it was to 100 pages, and I have opened it and read the forward, and I did find myself slipping into Netflix Vikings. But I'm going to get back. I made a promise, and I will honour my promise. Read it.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to make a comment to Councillor Curtin that the Chair and I had quite a lengthy discussion about this particular issue yesterday on the way back from the Māori Committee, and I think it was helpful, and we engaged well on the topic.
Did we now? Any other discussion on this?
Is this a fruitful use of staff time if the 6.1 is passed, in terms of
James,
the practicality of it actually working?
The short answer, in my view, is that no at this point in time. If Christchurch City Council is going to advance this, then I think it's worth us taking a watching brief and seeing whether it develops any merit. But I think it would be imprudent use of our resources at this point.
Point 2, Mr. Chair. 6.2.
Could we ask the...
We have a mover now. Do you have a seconder? You can second, Tom. Do you want to... No change to the annual plan is what we are moving. Do you have a seconder? Seconder? Do you wish to speak? I don't want to miss you again, that's all. Fenton, do you wish to talk? I do. I think that's very sensible. Christchurch are looking at this, and we can watch them carefully and see how it resolves. So, all those in favour? No change? Carried. Number 7, which is a combination of 57 and 70.
Happy to move, Chair.
Do we have any questions first?
Is Murray Deacon, is he the fellow that was talking about Ahuriri Estuary? No.
No, they were the Wairoa couple.
It was a forestry slash.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. That's right.
And also the minimum flow out of that dam.
Yeah. They have subsequently written me a letter which I'm passing on to the Chief Executive. So you're moving no change to the annual plan?
Well, no, I'm 7, 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Yeah. Mover and seconder, do you wish to speak, Fenton?
It'd be nice to get some formal acknowledgement of the minimum flow, exactly what is happening there. I have had a conversation with Mr. Maxwell on that, but it would be quite nice to publicly bring back exactly what's happening there and be, quite open with them what our position is and what the consent condition is. So I think that would be useful, and would be quite also refreshing for the Mr Deakins and Ms Jones to have some advice on the status of achieving the MPS freshwater. So there was a little confusion it was interesting, both of them were slightly different, so would be quite useful. Happy to support the recommendations.
Councillor Bay, were you seconded? Who was seconded there? You did second. You don't want to speak, though? Does anyone else want to speak? Tom?
Note that after they were invited to submit some photos, which they did after the meeting regarding the slash situation. So does this language also, will that convey that we intend to look into that matter as well? I think it does. It just talks about pollution incidents in general.
It does. It does. Yeah, I think it covers it.
Yep.
I'd just like to say I'm really pleased that concerned citizens bring these things to us, and they did follow up on the photographs, and they have since followed up with another letter which I got last night, and it is incumbent on us to do our best to deal with these issues, and I thought the photos of the slash were particularly graphic, so I hope our staff does get on and talk to these people and follow this up. So we are moving 1, 2, 3 and 4. We've got to move in a second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Number 8. Okay, where are we going to get up? Do we have any thoughts? Yes, Fenton? Do we have any thoughts first, Paul?
Just a quick thought, Chair. I think it's a really great initiative, but I would also suggest that not only meeting with the community van providers, but also with the Central Hawke's Bay District Council, because I think the Mayor, Worship the Mayor Alex Walker, brought up a really good program that's happening out at Pronghau in terms of community involvement in transport, which I think is an idea that's worth trying to replicate, and I think it might suit what's going on down there, what we've been asked to look at there. So not so much with the CHB district councillors, but with the council staff, or where, I don't know, what particular people would need to talk to.
Happy to include that as mover, Chair. Just the words community van providers in Central Hawke's Bay and the Central Hawke's Bay District Council.
It was actually more what the Mayor of Central Hawke's Bay brought up was some innovation around community being part of public transport. So
she could tell us directly as part of that conversation.
Yeah, she could. Which I thought was quite brilliant, actually.
CHB district should be involved. If it's through the mayor, then that's fine. She's a member of the Transport Committee. So I'd support the resolutions as modified.
Okay, so we have the resolutions modified. You've got the modification up there. Moved by Fenton. I think Alan did already not say he'd second it. Fenton, do you wish to talk more about it?
Oh, obviously, we've seen this happen, investigate these things both north and south at various times. Maybe it is time to go back and have another look. If there are innovative ways to provide a service in Central, conceively it could also then work in Wairau. So I think it just makes sense, and if there's a different way to get the job done, let's have a look at it. So I think it's quite timely.
Yeah.
Wairau already has a community van provider supported by this council.
Just round town though. Just round town.
Just as a seconder, you're on. You seconded it, so you've already. No, you did already, and you've had your word. Have you? You're happy with that? Okay. Are there any other speakers? I just want to say something here because Paul and I discussed this on our trip to Wairau because we were sitting in the same car for 6 hours together. We had to talk about something. But I was particularly interested in the innovation that that came from the Mayor of Central Hawke's Bay, a way of providing transportation in small regions, such as Wairoa and such as Central, all our small regions, all our small villages throughout our region. So, and I think that's where we need to go, rather than try and say the state, represented by us or represented by the state, is always going to pick up the tab. How do we help communities to solve their own problems? So I thought it's a really good discussion, which I'd like the Transport Committee to have. So we have a mover second. All those in favour? One. Against? It's carried. 9.
Clarification, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm uncertain as to the intent of 9.1. Can someone advise what the current quantum
Yes, I
of
think we do need an
allocation is in
explanation.
the current in the annual plan?
And on the whole process, on what's happened here, James, we probably need a bit of a...
So the current contribution is 100,000 per annum, which is commensurate with the contributions from Hastings District Council and Napier City, although I think Napier City, from memory, fund 110 for some historic reason. We do have a 3-year contract with Business Hawke's Bay, and this is the 3rd year of that on that funding trajectory, I think. Just hesitating slightly because I have something in the back of my mind telling me we're actually year 2 of year 3. I'll need to come back to you on whether it's 2 or 3 during our workshop on the Matariki discussion later on. But obviously the funding, the 3-year profile related to the long-term plan, and we are going into the development of another long-term plan process, and what's suggested here is that we use the next 12 months to finalise the Matariki delivery model, evaluate our longer-term funding for Business Hawke's Bay and economic development more broadly as part of the long-term plan, and that we revisit the contribution to Business Hawke's Bay in the context of that long-term plan. So it's really rolling over the funding for one more year.
Is that clear enough? Or do you want
Well, essentially, so in this one, it's no change to the annual plan, is that?
Correct.
They're not asking for any more.
Okay. So I'll move 9.2 then.
Before you do, any other discussion? We ready to
Chairman,
move
I think
along?
it's important that there's some qualification around this, and that it's clear that it is for 1 year and it's subject to the delivery model being finalised. Because again, we don't want to set up expectations that are unrealistic. I think it's appropriate to move 9.1, 9.2.
Well, I'll move 9.2, Mr. Chair.
Well, Councillor Dick moved 9.1.
I'd already moved 9.2.
What do you want to be, just the one? Do you want to change to that and say and send a signal to them that it's only for 1 year? What do you want to do?
The wording of 9.1 is entirely appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, then for 9.2 fits in as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And we already did have a mover here. So 9.1, 9.2.
Well, I'll move 9.2, Mr. Chair. That's in my original motion, was 9.2.
Without 9.1?
No, we don't need 9.1.
There's no change, that's right. It is.
We're not taking much notice of submissions, are we?
Well, confirms the funding.
So Chair, look, my advice is that it is helpful to signal to Business Hawke's Bay that our funding commitment to that organisation will be reviewed as part of the long-term plan and is tied to clarity around the Matariki delivery model. So
I think so too.
I do think there is value in...
Look, I'm happy. I'm very happy with that outcome, except that earlier we had a desire to actually send a signal and we were thwarted in doing so. I'm just intrigued with
You're
the
not having a little
consistency.
hissy fit here, are you?
All I'm seeking is consistency. I'm very happy to send that message. In fact, it's a message I want to send.
Therefore, are you prepared to move?
Very happy to, Mr. Chair. But let's be consistent.
I really appreciate that, and I will do my best to be consistent. 9.1, 9.2, we have a mover, and you'll second that, Alan.
Moving both, is he?
Yeah. Any discussion?
Yes, there is.
Except you're going
Thank
to
you, Mr.
instruct me to
Chair.
be consistent.
Yes, I think it is important to be consistent, and if we've got a message to send to submitters, we should send it.
I accept that.
And earlier we had submissions, and Councillor Dick suggested we don't send a note to the submitter and about our intentions for the future. I think it's a good practice to do, and we've done it in the past, and we should continue to do it.
We'll take that spanking. Now, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. It's passed. Okay, number 10, fisheries and shore. Oh, who's going to be councillor advocate there?
We didn't know.
You didn't know. Neil?
I think Councillor Bailey was particularly interested in that area, Mr. Chair, as I am, but
We were going to pistols at dawn to decide who we thought would be best suited for the role.
Have you done that?
Well, whoever it is.
Councillor, sorry, Chair, I was just going to make the point that the marine environment is not geographically specific to any particular councillor, and look, we welcome the engagement by any or all councillors in this matter. As Councillor Hewitt has pointed out, 3 councillors have previously signalled an interest in this area, so very comfortable with more than one councillors being the advocates in this space.
So we've got 2 over here. Who's the other one?
No, there's 3. It was Neil and Tom and myself. We had a meeting pre-Christmas.
You didn't have a secret meeting, did you?
We did.
My, my. So we have 4 councillors who are interested in this.
Sorry, Chair, I'm fine. So I think 3 councillors is more than enough.
Okay, we've added some names in. Any more discussion on this? You need to raise your hand a bit higher. You're just slipping away in the chair there. I don't want to miss Waira out. We have a mover and a seconder. Just to talk, Ben?
I think the sooner we can engage with everyone, including the fishing industry, actually, the better. I think everyone wants the same outcomes here. It's tenuous discussion. Let's make it a bit more forthcoming and realistic. So I'm happy to support.
I think that's a very valid point. Did you second, Tom, or did you just... Oh, you did. Do you want to talk, Paul?
Yeah, I'll just reflecting Councillor Wilson's words there. I think this is the first step in a long journey, and I'm pleased that we're taking that first step.
Tom?
I'm just going to remind us that we had a presentation a year or so ago that laid out a very comprehensive research program, and I recall the presenter being very effective to the point that there was a rare occasion of unanimous enthusiasm for what that gentleman had to say about what our inventory of needs was as far as working our way through this in a research way. So there's quite a bit of work sitting there waiting, I think, to be acted upon by this group.
Any other views?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I certainly concur with the previous speakers on this, that the marine environment is something, it's one of our priorities. We've identified very significant additional funding for it in the, as a hotspot, and I think the deficit we have in terms of previous input into that area into the marine space it's very timely to do something about that, particularly with the opportunity to collaborate with Napier City on it in terms of their aquarium outputs and the linkages to, if you like, on-land activity, estuary activity, etc. The coincidence is very important for us.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Just to
Yep.
say I concur with everything that's been said, and Tom touched on that presenter and the work stream, and it's tying in, as Neil said, it's tying in all of our land and water space activities, and it's really important and exciting stuff. So, yeah, I think we're all unanimous here.
Ben, do you want to say anything else, or you happy? We're moving a seconder. All those in favour? So we're doing 10.1, 10.2. Aye. Against? It's carried. Number 11.
Mr. Chairman, if it's the intention that the recommendations here are followed, then there's one name that's missing amongst the persons to be gathered together, and that's Napier City Council. They must be in there. So I'm prepared to move, actually.
We might want to know.
Not in the submit, it's actually in the
Yeah.
recommendation.
In the recommendation, you put, Neil.
I'm prepared to move.
No, we'll just hold. I don't want people rushing to move till we're ready to
I'd
go.
just make a comment, and it goes back to the notion of the advocacy, because I'm sure Councillor Bailey was having an interest in, whether Councillor Dick is interested as well, given the nature, positioning of the estuary in Napier City. I wonder whether it's something where we ought to have a collective or greater advocacy across the three councillors.
Do you want me to comment on that? I don't agree with that. This is so important that we need to have somebody that is dedicated, and our community knows they are dedicated, and the stakeholders know that they're dedicated. I don't want anything fluffy about this, that the public think they can go to one of three people. That this is just too important to divide the responsibility. That's my view.
I found Councillor Dick particularly fluffy.
I'm
That's just
happy
my
to go
view.
along with that, as long as, in fact, the other two constituency representatives are invited to the meeting.
Oh no, absolutely right, and I would expect collaboration to occur. Councillor Belford.
Just a question. When we, under 11.3, say makes no change to the annual plan, we're not preempting ourselves from, we have these hotspot proposals floating along, which involve significant funding internally and externally. Do we need to have language that anticipates that we may in fact spend more money in the coming fiscal year? We've sought, assuming later in this process we're going to discuss whether or not we are indeed raising our rates to generate $1 million of additional money. It has to be spent somewhere, and Ahuriri was one of the hot spots. So makes no change to annual plan seems to preempt our ability to spend more money.
So, Chair, the additional funding for the hotspots is included in the annual plan. It's the draft annual plan, and so that recommendation
it's already been allocated.
Is essentially affirming that additional commitment.
Okay.
Of course, what we don't know is whether we'll be successful in leveraging the external funding, and there may be further conversations that Council wish to have during the year to move money around within the budget if there are unintended outcomes from the funding applications that we're currently pursuing.
Happy with that answer?
Yep.
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I think that's missing from these particular recommendations is one of the concerns expressed by a number of the submitters around any potential future works in the estuary. I'm specifically thinking about June Graham's and T. Tyer's submissions and their concerns about what their thoughts are around what Napier City Council intends to do in the estuary. And I would like to support Councillor Dick's. I noticed he's moved the motion, but he hasn't had it seconded yet. But I'm happy to second it with the addition of a new clause that states, requests that staff investigate wording to make any resource consents for works within the Ahuriri estuary subject to public notification. and I asked that, it's very similar to the issue we had
Well,
with...
Mr Chairman, if he's seconding my motion, then he's changed it entirely, so it's not appropriate.
Okay, then that's fine. I'll move an amendment to the motion then, but there is no motion on the books at the moment.
Just to say bit of background, the Ahuriri Estuary is going to be have a statutory board, governance board over it, and we are going to, in the first instance, we will have someone from this council nominated to be on that statutory board. So a lot of this leads into that, and that statutory board will have great powers over the estuary, the powers that you are trying to work around now. So you don't really need that when you have the statutory board. That would be my thoughts.
So you're comfortable that the
I'm very
statutory board
comfortable.
cover it? Okay.
Is that a correct assessment?
Okay, then I withdraw. I'm happy. Therefore, I'm happy to second Councillor Dick's motion that he
As
just
is.
put up.
With the addition of Napier City Council.
Yes, with that addition there, yeah, that they would be invited to those meetings.
In that vein, Mr Chair, Hastings District Council is actually nominated on the statutory board as well, so I wonder...
And Napier.
Yeah, Napier and Hastings.
Yeah.
So I wonder, could we just include those two, given that they will be parties to that?
Mr Chairman, I'd just like to speak to an aspect of the
Certainly.
motion. In particular, the matter raised by Warwick Marshall, who contended that some of the problems that now exist with Ahuriri Estuary arise from the fact that its drainage function has been, it appears, led to deteriorate. And what he did say in his submission was that previously in the middle of the channel there was a excavated drainage channel maintained, and that seemed to make some sense. So I think it's something that we should be looking at.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know whether you've got any comments on that, James. No comment on that. Are there any...
Sorry, Chair. Look, I think the one comment I could make is that that is an issue that would undoubtedly fall under the statutory board.
I think so, yeah.
One of the things which the board is premised on is that perhaps more unilateral action taken by local bodies to manage these resources won't be the way of the future. There'll be collaborative decision making involving all stakeholders and all parties, and we are required by statute, once it's fully enacted, to develop a comprehensive plan, and so those matters will be addressed during that time.
Yes, the statutory board is going to have a lot of authority over that estuary, and things will change as a result of that. And our representative on that board is, I'm looking forward to having good representation on that board. So we have a mover. Who was the mover? Just remind me. Councillor Dick moved and Councillor Bailey seconded. Do you wish to speak again, either of you two? You're fine? You've spoken?
Who is this council's representative on that board?
We haven't formally decided. I guess some of the people around this table would have some prejudices and views on that. That's something we need to discuss and later on, who that person's going to be. So we move in a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. That is. That was all of those. Level 1, 2, 3. We're up to 12 now. The West Shore residents are now here today. Here they are. So, any comments on this?
Thank you, Chair. Just more around the officer's response to the submission, specifically paragraph the bottom of paragraph A on page 27, which kind of indicates to me that the staff recommendation is that a line be established that recognises the current beach profiles and aims to hold this line in future, but that sets it at today's date. Whereas I'm not entirely sure whether that's a decision that's not been made by the Coastal Strategies Committee or come through that particular committee, or whether that's a decision that's a position we really want to take right now. I'm not convinced that that's the case. I know it's only in the recommendation and it doesn't relate to the motion that's before us, but or the recommendation that's before us. But I just sort of wanted to draw that one out.
Peter.
Yeah, Chair, I actually agree with Councillor Bailey on that, and I've actually drafted up an extra clause to go in the motions to accompany this particular submission. And also the submitter has requested that we investigate whether we can screen out the larger pebbles for the renourishment program, and I think that needs to go in as well. So I've drafted a resolution for that too. In regard to 12.1, which is the central response that staff have suggested, I've actually already taken the liberty of referring the suggestion that was contained in the submission to the technical advisory group for the coastal hazards strategy, and it's been adopted as an option and will go forward for consideration by the technical experts.
Can you put those, can we have those changes?
Yes, sure. Unless there are other comments, I'm happy to move this and add
Well,
those.
it's been recommended to your committee, so I think we should take your changes and see if
Well, I'm happy to leave 12.1. In fact, it's already happened, so it's just...
That's right, yeah.
So I'm happy with 12.1. Suggest adding a 12.2, which would read as follows: requests staff investigate the establishment of an effective monitoring program for the beach renourishment. So I haven't restricted it just to what was suggested there, but I think it's up to the staff to go and have a look. Yeah, you can't add the word program, you'll have it in there twice. And a 12.3, which would read, requests staff assessed the cost of screening shingle. For use in the nourishment program to remove larger pebbles and report the cost back to the July council meeting. That would give you enough time, I think.
Look, I suspect that that quotes will need to be sought from the private suppliers. So if you gave us another month, it might.
All right. Well, let's make it August then. August.
Everybody happy with those changes? Second the change, or second the motion with the changes, the proposal with the changes. Who moved that? Peter did. Okay, is there any discussion on West Shore? Yes, Paul.
Just one brief comment again, coming from the staff report on this particular thing. Paragraph E, it says Napier Port is also involved in developing a joint coastal strategy and HBRC will continue discussions with the port to determine best possible outcomes for the dredge material. I'm just really pleased to see that they're going to continue that, because I think that's really, really important. We have an opportunity with the proposed new dredging of the shipping channel to look at future solutions. So that's a good point.
Anybody else before I come back to Peter? Peter?
Yeah, just a couple of comments in closing, Chair. The port's done a lot of work, as you can imagine, on the material that they're going to dredge, assuming that the new wharf goes ahead. It's something like 3 million cubic metres of material, although 90% of it apparently won't be usable for the purpose that we'd like it to be used, that still leaves something in the order of 300,000 cubic metres of material that might be suitable for putting back the material that's been removed by erosion processes over the past few years. And there are two areas that are under consideration by the joint hazards process. One is the intertidal, which obviously is the area between low and high tide, and the other, which is proposed here, is a sandbar that's a little bit further out, which would hopefully break down the waves action a bit more and wash the sand back onto the beach. Now, whether it's going to work or not, the technical people will let us know, but it's certainly worthy of investigation, and I thank the West Shore Residents Association for bringing it to our attention and getting it back on the table.
Thank you very much, Peter. So we have a move and a seconder. All those in favour of the motion as it is? Aye, 2. Against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Number 14. 13. Oh, Ngāti Pararoa. Yep. 13. I'll put it up. You got any comment on this one, James, as you're doing your text? I've requested staff initiate. Any comments on this one? Well, James is thinking about his...
Look, there's a solid body of work proposed there. So,
the only comment I'd make, Mr. Chairman, is I've been obviously the discussion has talked earlier about signalling to submitters. Perhaps the intent for the long-term plan, and certainly with 13.3, I think that we're signalling there to generally to tangata whenua and to the treaty settlement entities that we'll be doing a fair bit of work leading up to the draft long-term plan and looking at the level of resourcing that we currently provide and what we're proposing to provide, that will address a number of the points that they made in their submission, which aren't otherwise specifically dealt with.
Thank you, Liz. Any other thoughts?
We can move, Mr. Chair.
No, just before you do, no, we'll move it. Sorry.
Well, happy to move 13.1 to 13.5.
You're missing out. 13.25. The whole lot. Yeah. Okay, we will move a seconder. I'll second that. Neil, do you wish to speak? I'll just briefly speak. 13.3 was an issue that was raised in Mahia yesterday. There is a lot of angst in some quarters of Tangata Whenua around this issue of representation at executive level in the council, and until it's addressed, I guess that will continue on. So it is heavily in their minds. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, 1 to 5. Aye. Against? Carried. Number 14. Get that up to you. Do we have a mover, or do you wish to have discussion on this? Have a mover? Seconder? Paul, do you wish to talk to it? Neil? Anyone else wish to speak? We'll move. We have a mover and seconder. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Number 15. Oh, this is a biggie. Okay, team, this is a biggie. Discussion, Peter.
Can I just ask a question? Do we have currently anything in the budget to cover the proposed cost of 150,000?
No, Councillor, my way I've read this is that they've put their hand up for 150,000 from the $1 million fund because biodiversity was in there. So they've front-footed it and said, well, can we have 150 for whatever?
Yes.
Chair, just further clarification, Chief Executive, could you just advise, we've obviously had resources going into that area. Can you quantify those in some way?
We have had our terrestrial ecologist working about 30% of her time, and we've had some policy staff as well as our program leader providing project management support to the establishment of the foundation, including some internal legal advice on the trust deed. It's fair to say that we've been begging and borrowing resource from within the organisation to support the establishment of the foundation. In the last financial year, it was to the tune of about $40,000 worth of effort across all the staff. So I describe it as, in a sense, an in-kind contribution to the foundation, but we have been the resource that's got it to this point. And what they're now looking for is us to fund the employment of a full-time individual to really take over those functions. The staff view at this point in time is that something to consider as part of the long-term plan. It's a real step change in funding. We will continue to support the finalisation of the trust deed and the establishment of the trust with the staff resources we've got. So we can get this thing established. What we won't be able to do is give it the level of resource and momentum, I guess, that they're looking for at this point in time. I would note, however, that the hotspot initiatives will make a significant contribution to biodiversity enhancement in the region. And if we manage to leverage significant funding from central government, that will flow in as well. And so I think once we've got greater clarity about the funding of the actual activity which can be undertaken to enhance biodiversity in the region, both by ourselves and our partners, we'll be in a better position to understand what ongoing support the foundation needs by way of secretariat support, etc. I would describe this as a desirable thing to do, but it's at this point in time probably nice to do rather than essential, and is possibly slightly premature at this point in time.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Tom.
Question. I don't recall them actually submitting any kind of a outline of how the 150 would be spent. Is there such a thing sitting around somewhere?
I think it's extremely high level, and it's essentially to fund an individual with some, so it's a full-time FTE with some overhead expenses to essentially become the secretariat for the foundation.
And although what you, I'm not sure that I understand fully what you just said about the monies that would come hopefully via the Kickstart initiative. Does that release any money, provide any new money in this area?
Yeah. Okay.
Each of the Kickstart projects will require their own project management. They will have some overhead built into them for administration, etc. And it may well be that in undertaking those hotspot initiatives that there is some resource which in the fullness of time might migrate to some more centralised body such as the foundation. But there are some decisions that the council will need to make in the context of the long-term plan around how much it's going to fund itself and how much it wants to contribute to a third-party organisation such as the foundation to do work on our behalf and independently, or what we're going to fund directly.
I guess I understand the desirability of pushing off any significant commitment into the long-term planning process, but we have a very enthusiastic group of people who have built up a pretty big head of steam, and they sit over there with their 30% junior staff allocation and watch us apparently devote mega resources to pest control and Cape to City and, you know, all of this. They're sitting there with what they think is a regional biodiversity strategy, which is, you know, getting niggling resources, frankly. And yet, on the other hand, we have, as I say, mega resources over here. I would hate this to be formulated in a way that didn't somehow provide some financial encouragement that this is, in this interim year, going to get some kind of step up of support. I don't know how to articulate that, but just saying that we're going to kind of continue to, you know, with the status quo, I don't think is a very adequate response to matching the level of effort the community is putting into this project. So, you know, their level of effort is up here. Our level of effort would appear to be down here, kind of de minimis, just to keep the door open. And so I can't justify spending $150,000 because it's not really been laid out what's the work plan, what would actually happen to that money. But it seems to me there might be some middle ground here that I'm not yet hearing articulated, and I don't have the ability to. So.
Thank you, Tom. Finn, just before you don't turn to you, I just want to clarify to Tom that comes directly out of the submission, Tom. So that is what they want the money for. Yeah. And the other thing is, we haven't just allocated junior people. We have had senior scientists. I understand everything you're talking about, and I want to talk to that a bit later. But we have allocated some senior planner and senior scientists to this group as well. So, Fenton.
Just a question, and I'm not sure anyone at the table can answer it, but through you, Chair. My understanding of the Cape to City project is we've got it'll all come out of existing budgets, right, including staff time, etc., on a sort of a 3-year deal, which must be getting pretty close to being re-evaluated, etc. And I'm just wondering, I sense the frustration of my colleague here, but when we get into the LTP, we're going to have a more broader discussion around all these things, I would think, on the basis of the success of Cape to City, the fact of the buy-in, the other partners, etc. And that could be the place that this then does get it, you know, we can release that head of steam that we've just heard about. So I'm just wondering whether, and on that basis, instead of agreeing to or declining, this is the subsequent question to the Chief Executive, makes no change, the annual plan actually won't be detrimental to the head of steam that's been built up. So 2 questions.
Look, we will continue to complete the work on establishing the trust deed and setting the foundation up. We have funding set aside to do the ecosystem mapping and prioritisation tool, which is in there and is noted. So the underpinning work will continue. I guess what we won't be funding is an individual to go and do fundraising on behalf of that is the core thing that's missing here. And look, I would note that since the establishment of the strategy, we have struggled to get cash contributions from any of the partners involved. So there's a lot of enthusiasm of individuals, volunteers, etc., which is great, but we just haven't seen the money from any other organisations, including the Department of Conservation in this regard. So we have been doing the heavy lifting to get it to this point, and they now want a fundraising resource, and I guess we're saying that while that would be nice, that's part of a broader conversation we'd like to have as part of a long-term plan.
What would be your view if we put up $50,000 on the assumption, on the condition that it were matched by the rest of the community?
My expectation is that we will struggle to get that funding matched based on experience to date.
But it would be a gesture forward, would it not?
Could be.
So I'm really concerned about this, given that they've got this momentum, we've encouraged it, and basically we're not going to give them any support to carry on until we review this in the long-term plan. So there's going to be a hole for a year plus, which really concerns me. So is there any way that we can take the $150,000 that's been requested and incorporate it into any other budget that we currently have in our annual plan?
Well, look, we could have put additional funding into the biodiversity area, and we could work through the year and how we support the foundation with that funding, so it would remain HBRC controlled funding as opposed to handing over essentially a grant to the foundation. That might work in well with Councillor Belford's suggestion in terms of we could put forward in principle a willingness to match any funding that comes into the foundation up to a certain quantum. Chair, we've just had Desiree and Keiko join the room, and I'm just wondering whether we ask them to just give us a little bit more clarity around what we risk not achieving if we do decline this funding, and the extent to which we can support the foundation through the year to come.
Yeah, I would like to do that if you could come up, because I think this is really important. I strongly sympathise with Tom's view that this is a really good bunch of people, really well led, who are being active in our core competency area. This is us, this is what we do, and this is what we support. So I think we need to get a really good understanding of this before we make a decision either way. Floor's yours, guys.
Good morning, councillors. Sorry, I just caught the end of that. Do you just want to repeat what you wanted to say?
Look, the discussion's been around whether or not we're ready to make this level of investment. There's a lot of support for the foundation and for the strategy, obviously, and a lot of enthusiasm from councillors to see the foundation prosper. But we haven't had a lot of detail around what the 150,000 would be spent on, not a detailed budget or a business plan at this point in time. And the council would like to understand what are the implications if this funding is declined, and what support we will give during the year in any event through our already budgeted activities.
Right, so as you know, there's been a multi-stakeholder implementation planning group meeting for over a year, and we're just in the final stages of developing the action plan, and the foundation is one of the priority actions resulting from that. And this proposal is for a dedicated resource to do all the groundwork to set up the foundation. So I guess if it is declined, the worst case scenario is that all that goodwill and momentum that's been gained over the last 12 months would be lost. And just as seems an ideal time to launch with a dedicated resource, with someone with the specialist skills to do all the groundwork that needs to be done to get the foundation up and running. So the goal is really to have a self-sustaining foundation within the next 5 years. And when we say self-sustaining, we mean the ability to pay for the administrative and management costs associated. So conservatively, we've done some figures, and we think to have that safe self-sustaining foundation within 5 years, we need an endowment fund of about $3 million. So at a rate of return of, say, 5%, that would give us $150K a year to spend on the administration of the foundation. And we think that's absolutely doable. That would require some funding, some leadership from councils, not only the regional council but also the TAs, to come up to fund the endowment fund initially, and then also this administrative person who would be tasked with finding, leveraging that money to find other sources of funding, so through philanthropic funding, corporates, iwi, other local and global businesses.
So Desiree, you're essentially saying we're caught into a chicken and egg here, where we need an endowment to fund a resource to run the foundation longer term, but in the absence of having somebody to go and raise the $3 million, the whole situation could spin its wheels indefinitely.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair, and it's probably through the Chief Executive. Given the scenario, is it possible for us to loan the money, 150,000, get that kickstart going with a view that the fundraiser would do their level best to raise 150,000 in that year?
It's a novel suggestion. I'd be reluctant to recommend it on the basis that we may saddle the foundation with a debt that actually reduces its momentum rather than builds its momentum over the next few years. It becomes quite a large. It would depend on whether it was the priority was to repay the council, or whether the priority was to raise the $3 million, and then once the $3 million, then the council would be reimbursed at some later date. So the terms would be, yeah. I think from our perspective, we would probably rather just get on and fund it rather than try and seek those funds back.
Are you at the next question?
Yeah, I mean, so the way I'm hearing this, the skill set that is needed is really a fundraising skill set. And I'm just wondering whether our approach to that might be to finance, you know, a Jenny Giblin or someone like that to get stuck into it from a fundraising standpoint. It sounds like the programmatic development we're able to provide from our staff internally. We're doing this inventory and so forth, which sounds like it would keep us busy for a year. But the real bottleneck is putting the fundraising together and getting that on a solid basis, and that seems to me that that's an expertise that does exist in some people around the community here, and maybe that's what we should be supporting very surgically as opposed to just a general grant of some kind.
So, Councillor, that would be quite scalable, and you know, for example, 50,000 might buy the services either of an individual part-time or somebody like the Giblin Group to go and do some fundraising. So, I guess, you know, 150 is probably, you know, somebody full-time for a year, and that may not be required. And if we did make a more modest contribution, we could certainly hope to see it leveraged with support from others. Can I just clarify, in terms of the trust deed, my understanding, we've been doing the work on drafting the trust deed and getting that up and running. So in terms of the mechanics behind the foundation, have we not largely done that over the last 12 months?
We have been working on it, and we do need to make a decision whether we go for a small, we've sort of changed our thinking lately in that we think there's probably a two-step journey towards a foundation, and that it would maybe be beneficial to have a small, like, trust deed where we have some accountants and lawyers initially just to get the endowment fund, and then move into a fully fledged foundation. But we can do that either in-house with a bit of legal support. That's probably not a big job, but the idea there is that to get the right trustees on the foundation, which we want to be high profile and influential, we think it would be beneficial to have a war chest, so we could go to them and say, look, we've got this endowment fund of $3 million. I mean, the long-term goal is to have a $50 million foundation, so I don't want to undersell it, but we have done some work thinking, well, how can we get to 3 million in 5 years, which is conservative, but the long-term goal is for a $50 million foundation, which will really make a difference in the region. But we think we can get to 3 million in 5 years if we have this dedicated resource with the specialist skills. I don't know if that answers.
Comment to that? No? Debbie, and then.
Thank you. I've listened, and would like the opportunity to speak to it, but I'm prepared to move 15.3 and 15.4 based on the advice from our Chief Executive.
And I'll second that.
I just don't want to. You have a further question first. Yeah, I just don't want to rush these things, but basically you're agreeing with what they're saying.
Yeah, I think this is really, really important work, and they're a huge group of passionate and dedicated community enthusiasts, and I think that we just need to do it properly and make sure we give them all the support we can, but get it going through the long-term plan, and then you get the foundations right to grow in the future.
So you're moving 15.1 and 15.2?
No, 15.3 and 15.4.
Oh, 15.3 and 15.4. Oh, sorry, I'm glad I caught up with that speed. Okay, we have a move and second to 15.3 and 15.4.
Yeah, I'm going to speak against this, Chair. I think this is too important to put on the back burner for a year. Oh,
yeah, no, you wish to speak. You've spoken. Alan, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think this needs to be dealt with progressively and essentially through the long-term plan. There's been an assurance that the activities and of the foundation will be supported in the current annual plan. I think you've just got to be a bit careful about how you go about these things. it's a bold and ambitious goal that they have. But there are other ways. If there's a problem at the moment with a fundraising resource, well, that could be contracted in. There are people around who locally with a very good track record in raising funds of this nature. And I think there needs to be a very rational consideration of how much of this is delivered and controlled and managed in-house, as opposed to passing it out to a separate entity. I mean, we've already got sort of Hawke's Bay Tourisms and Business Hawke's Bay and so on that are dependent on us for funding, and I'm not saying that this is any less important, if not more so, but I believe the appropriate way to manage this is internally through our own resources in the coming year.
Yeah, Chair, I'm really surprised about this. The mover and the seconder of this motion have both stressed how important this is, and neither of them are prepared to fund any of it, so that doesn't make any sense to me. Much as I'm really reluctant to put further pressure on our annual budget, I can't support the notion that this can wait until the long-term plan or next year to be supported, because all the momentum will be lost, and I think we have to do something to address this in this current annual plan, so I'll be voting against the motion.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd sort of kicked myself rather for not appreciating that we hadn't actually made an allocation in the annual plan, draft annual plan, and I'm mystified how on earth I missed that, or we missed that together. It should have been in there, has to be in there. There has to be an allocation. This is far too important. We've already signalled right up front and centre in our earlier discussions about where we want to go with this council's direction of travel. We've already foreshadowed that. We've had the presentations and expressed our strong support for the strategy and the foundation not to fund at this stage would be very remiss of me, and so I can't support this recommendation, but we'll be foreshadowing a further recommendation to actually consider at least some consideration for the strategy.
Considering the scale of discussion, this annual plan and the variations or proposed variations, to put another % increase on now, which is roughly what this is, well, not quite maybe, but it's getting close. It just seems to be a little knee-jerk to me. This was a body of work that's been well supported by council. We've had some good advice from our chief executive, and frankly, this to me is just too much on the hoof to chuck another 150 grand on top of the proposed rate increase. So I support the recommendation as outlined.
Thank you, Chair. We are continually asked to be bold about a number of different things, to be bold in investing $80 million into the Rutanawha scheme. I think if we were to decline this request from the Hawke's Bay Biodiversity Strategy, that would be the least bold thing we could do. So therefore, I will not be supporting the motion.
I'm not going to support the motion either for the various reasons stated. I'm not comfortable voting for 150,000, so I look forward to what Councillor Curtin will propose as an alternative to that. I think we must do something in this annual plan to support this activity, and I'm looking forward to the next step in this discussion after we reject this amendment, this motion.
Any other speakers? Just before we go back, I'll just speak briefly. I guess Councillor Belford's view is my view as well. This is just far too important to for us just to say no. And I also look forward to Councillor Curtin's brilliance in a couple of minutes to see how we get around this, because I also sympathise with the fact that we don't have anything in the budget for this, and that is a bit amazing as well. So, back to the mover. Debbie?
Thank you, and I appreciate this is challenging for everyone around the table because we are all supportive of the project, but I think it's important that we do take this one step at a time and we ultimately keep it in-house as opposed to handing over a grant. So just in closing, I'd like to thank our new Chief Executive for his guidance on this matter. Thank you.
Mover and a seconder. All those in favour of 15.3 and 15.4? Against? No. The motion is lost. So we're back to square one.
Chair, I'm looking at, excuse me interrupting, I'm looking at the time and thinking
Yeah,
maybe we can have a cup of tea and have
no
a bit of a
smoko
chat
break.
about
I was looking at that as well, and I know that our former sharer, they're very strict about smoko breaks, so we will call a break and we can have a discussion. Can you do that?
5 minutes?
What do you mean 5 minutes?
We're going to have morning tea ready. Well, 2 minutes. So if we can just.
It's not quite ready. Morning tea, they tell me morning tea's not ready.
It will be in 5
Yes, it is.
Morning tea is
It must be ready. We're going to stop. We're going to make a cup of tea. Stop.